What are signs that you're in a toxic relationship? Sometimes it feels hard to tell. So I think that there are a lot of signs here, some of which will be deeply personal to each individual person, and some of which are kind of more general. I think a more general one is if you find yourself having a lot of fights and you're confused about what they're about, that's probably a toxic relationship. If you find yourself spending more time processing your relationship than actually like being in and enjoying your relationship, something's going wrong there. Something's not going right in that relationship, right? Your relationship should be mostly relating, having fun, being with each other, connecting with each other, and then a not like 0% processing, but like if it's getting above like 30% of your time together, what's going on? Like, where's your relationship, right? If your whole relationship is processing your relationship, something's going wrong. If you feel like you're walking on eggshells around a partner, something's going wrong there, right? If you feel like you can't be fully yourself in a relationship, something is up there. Now, sometimes these are things that are happening within us. Sometimes they are things that are our partner's stuff that we're starting to encounter and dance around. Sometimes it is something relationally about the people involved in the relationship. So none of this is to say like blame on any one partner, but it is to say that, you know, if your relationship has a whole lot of conflict, people say like relationships are hard, relationships take work. I agree that relationships take work. I don't know that I 100% agree that relationships should be hard. I think that most of us, unless we have put in a lot of work, and even sometimes when we have put in a lot of work, have very poor skills when it comes to communication, when it comes to identifying our own feelings, when it comes to figuring out how to address our feelings in healthy ways, when it comes to dealing with conflict in healthy ways. And I think that because we have those poor tools, relationships end up feeling hard because we let problems fester and then they're huge to deal with, or we feel a little hurt and we take it out on our partner rather than dealing with it in a healthier way, right? Like the things that we do because we aren't as skillful as we could be leads to more and more turmoil in our relationships. And, the healthiest relationships I've been in, friendships, romantic relationships, sexual relationships, have been the ones where even early on, it just feels safe and it feels easy, right? And safe doesn't mean like 100% nothing never goes wrong. What it means is even when things go wrong, I trust that my partner will show up for that conversation. I trust that they will be able to hear what I have to say, that they will value my experience, even if they don't 100% agree with what I'm saying or how I experienced things. I can trust that my partner will be skillful in how they handle conflict, that they won't be lashing out at me, or that if we do move to places of less skillfulness, that we'll be dedicated to being accountable for that and responsible and cleaning it up, right? Safety in relationship, I think, is not necessarily about whether you have conflict. Safety is about, do you trust that conflict is handled in a way that creates the least harm possible for everybody involved? Least harm is not always zero harm. Least harm doesn't mean it's not hard or it's not disturbing, but the idea is that we show up for conflict as people who are on the same team rather than people who are trying to win and defeat each other. It means that we are recognizing when we have hit like our max capacity for dealing with a conflict in a healthy way, and we need to take a step back and regulate our systems better, right? When relationships are toxic, a lot of times what's happening is that people are getting spun up and letting that carry them through how they interact with their partners. Or they are holding a lot of something that they haven't quite worked through yet, and it's spilling into the dynamic with their partner and spilling onto their partner. And that spilling can look a lot of ways. Like if you are someone who has a deep belief that people are going to find you not good enough and leave you, and that they're judging you all the time, the way that spills into your relationship might be about like making the worst assumption about every little thing. That if someone hasn't texted you back in a couple hours, the assumption is they're leaving you and they think you're boring and terrible, right? That is your thing that has spilled into this relationship now, that you are painting onto somebody else. And so I think, again, in toxic relationships, there is this way that it often feels like everything is in drama, right? Or like there are these big dramas fairly often, or like a fight is happening and you don't know how you got there, and you don't know why it's such a big fight, or you don't understand like what has happened. Or if you feel like when you try to let a partner know about something they've done that hurt you or upset you, and instead what you end up doing is comforting them for how hurt they were by hearing that, right? Like that's another sign of these weird fights that you don't understand, or these ways that conflict is not being held well. Another big sign for a toxic relationship is feeling like you don't get to be a person anymore, but you have to like run everything but through your partner like they're your parent. Depending upon what kinds of entwinement you have with a partner, there may be things you do need to check with them. If you live with someone and you're just bringing people home all the time, depending on the person you're living with, that may or may not be cool. Like that may or may not be okay. If you have children with someone, you can't just decide to drive away for a week without talking to your co-parents first, right? There are things that you may need to do in order to take care of your commitments and your obligations, or the things that you owe to those who are around you, right? To be in healthy interdependence with them. But if you feel like you have to get permission from your partner to do the things that are important to you in your life, there's probably something toxic happening there, right? Our partners are not our owners. Even in a kink context, they're your owner only because you've agreed on it and it's fun for you in the ways you've agreed to it, right? They're not actually owning you. Our partners are not our parents, even in a caregiver little dynamic. They're parenting you in a way that feels good to you in that dynamic that you've clearly negotiated. So if it feels like you don't get to make your choices and you haven't clearly negotiated that, that's important.